back to Vivid Earth. This is ANINA MALHERBE-LAN, and I've got back with me today Georg Ritschl from Orgonise Africa, who in my mind, or in my opinion, my humble opinion, makes the best orgonite in Africa. And he supplies the whole world, not just Africa. And I wanted to get him back to just talk about a few subjects that we didn't get to touch on the last time, that hopefully you're going to find very interesting. But yeah, without further ado, welcome, George. How are you?
I'm great, and thanks for having me back. Very exciting to continue our conversation. So, and hello to your listeners as well.
Yeah, wonderful. And I just was reminded of your payoff line under your logo, which says planetary organ healing, which I love.
Yeah.
Because it's not just about personal orgonite, but it's really about the planet and how orgonite can shift the entire frequency of the planet in a way, and calm things down, make it more peaceful. So I want to dive into that. And then also the other thing that you mentioned that struck me was you said orgonite is like acupuncture for the planet or Mother Earth, basically.
Yeah.
Which I love as well. So maybe you can explain why you feel it's acupuncture for the planet.
Yeah, because basically what we are doing is not just putting orgonite around us in our homes to protect ourselves, but we go out and we give the orgonite. And this word gifting has its origin in the early orgonite movement that was started by Don Croft. And what it means is that you look at a big area and you do place the orgonite in many places that need healing, such as near all the cell phone towers and many other places that create bad energy. But also we have done a lot of expeditions with people that have special abilities. Let's call it gift of seeing energy. So I had one guy with whom I traveled here in Botswana, Zimbabwe, and South Africa, who basically sees energy vortices that are coming out of the earth, and his perception is that these vortices are all soiled. The energy is bad. Okay, so and the interesting thing was, and that's actually the closest to get to acupuncture, where we did this trip, and he would lock on to the next bad energy vortex, and he would bring us within 10 centimeters to exactly the point where that orgonite has to be placed. Doesn't matter through how many brambles you have to climb, and that's a totally different level. So in his perception, he's actually a retired mathematics professor from a place near Seattle in Washington, United States, who is known under the name Lao Tzu, which means old man. So he's also into Tai Chi and all these things, and very perceptive. And this Earth acupuncture trip, he did that on 5 continents. So in his perception, when you do enough of these kind of vortices and open them up, you change the energy at the stratospheric level. So basically what he calls the energy canopy that is around the planet, okay? Which is the part that they're trying to manipulate with HARP and chemtrails and all that stuff, which the kind of weather warfare against humankind. But the bad energy has even probably older and deeper sources than just the technological assault, that has been.
Also, given how many tunnels and dams are really under the Earth's surface, it makes you wonder, if that has any effect with what we know is going on, under the Earth. That also must be resulting in some very bad energy.
Absolutely. There is a lot of that stuff, and we have been targeting that in our expeditions in southern Africa, targeting it on a, let's call it, I've got a lot of information about such places, okay, but it's very hard to verify that information. But I had contact with people who have been in the, let's call it, deep state military or the mercenary scene, you know, that is quite prolific in South Africa, actually. And at some point I got from such a person who I think was playing both sides, and he wasn't completely honest with me, but he gave me a map that was basically containing all the underground bases in Southern Africa up to the Congo.
Wow.
Eastern Congo especially. And I acted on that map because I'm only saying, okay, I don't care, you know, if it's an alien underground basis, if it's secret military, whatever it is, it cannot be bad to put orgonite there. So very often the results give us confirmation. And some of these places that he pointed out did have visible anomalies, like, you know, in the middle of Zimbabwe, somewhere off the road, suddenly you have, at the place that he indicated, you have perfect asphalt roads in the bush, not connected to the main, you know, to the main highway or anything. Or suddenly you have some kind of ventilation shafts, you know, sticking out in the middle of nowhere, but often it's not even visible. So yeah, that's another acupuncture story. And all these things basically work together. So the activity of gifting, if you don't know what to do, just put one tower buster near every cell phone tower that you see. That is the basic. Okay? That's the basic where you're basically deactivating already the worst kind of energetic haze that is all over the place. And then if you have inklings, rumors, information, whatever you want about any other special places that need healing, then just do it. You know, it's not necessary to have total certainty about this. You know, if it feels right, do it.
Yeah.
And you're not making a mistake, even if you would place the orgonite somewhere where nothing significant has ever happened. Because we're also looking at places where some kind of traumatic experiences have been had, you know, mass murder sites, battlefields, concentration camps. You know, we've done, by the way, all the European concentration camps of the Nazi period, regardless of what some people are saying about the story. It doesn't matter, it's traumatic either way, you know. So yeah, we do places of indoctrination, worship, prisons, police stations, parliaments, you know, Masonic lodges, whatever you may find. Very often these places are also near, I mean, you often find a cell phone tower right there, you know, so these different ideas overlap.
Yeah, they can just double up because we've seen how many cell phone towers are on school property, church property. Obviously, we know they pay these institutions to have the tower there.
Sometimes it's necessary for the budget, you know, but also they want to fry those brains when they're still supple and young.
Yeah, absolutely. They don't have any good intentions. The worse it can be for the population, that's what they go for. So let's not underestimate the nefariousness of their character. And that's so wonderful because anyone can gift places. And if we all do it collectively, I mean, you've done so much across the African continent. You gifted so many different areas and places and towers and rivers and you know, you name it, drought areas. And That's
Getting a bit
amazing.
old and lazy now. I have to admit, I'm getting a bit old and lazy now. You know,
Look, you've done quite
I was
enough.
a bit more adventurous 10, 15 years ago when I also ended up in prison twice.
Wow.
Yeah, no, I had some interesting experiences in Zimbabwe and in Mozambique. I've been arrested for what we are doing.
Really?
Yeah,
Did
yeah.
they know what you were doing? Did they
Yeah.
understand what you were doing?
Yes, yeah, why not? Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
So in 2006, that was actually a trip where I often invited people, you know, to participate and also share a little bit of the petrol cost or something. I had a guy from Austria, and we were planning to do a really big trip, going all the way up Lake Malawi, and the plan was to go all the way up to Uganda, and then to go back along Lake Tanganyika and cross to Rwanda and Burundi, and you know, all these quite adventurous destinations, or at least so it seemed in 2006. They were quite undeveloped then. But we got apprehended on the Zimbabwean-Mozambican border, while seeing that we threw out something, you know, from the car, and there were basically T-shirt wearing civilian police everywhere. You know, very interesting scenery there. You don't even think they are police. You know, they had anyways. But so we got stopped, you know, and then they said, "What have you done there? What have you thrown there?" I said, "No, I don't remember." You know, I tried to play stupid and set it up. You know, maybe it was an apple, or you know. But then already one of these runners came and had one of my tower busters, and so of course I had been caught lying, you know. So
You've been busted with your buster.
yes, and the little truck was full with 5 cloudbusters and 2,000 tower busters, roughly something like that.
Wow.
Or a big. It was supposed to be the mother of all expeditions, and so then they kept us at the police station and took our passports. The first night we slept on the floor in the charge office on the concrete, listening to the crackling radio the whole night. You know, where they, I don't know, whatever police communications went on there. Then the second night we were able to pitch our tent next to the police station, and we still had to stay there. They had our passports. And then they brought investigator after investigator after investigator. So it was kind of ramping up, you know, and the original station commander there, we actually got on his good side very quickly. It's very funny to be incarcerated in Africa. It's very different from, I think, a European or American or even South African experience, you know, because it's like a beehive. There's constant communication going on. So while we were, you know, like under arrest, we would give Orgonite to everybody who came and asked us what's going on. And we had our first talk with the station commander. He realized very quickly that we didn't have any evil intentions, and turned out his mother was a Sangoma, and he understood when we said that this is kind of a muti rather than, you know, anything technological in that mystic sense. But they brought more and more people, you know, trying to like get us into contradictions, and so for 3 days that went on, and then they decided to bring us back inland, and we had to, of course, drive with our car. The diesel was almost finished, and there was no diesel in Zimbabwe at that time.
Wow.
That was sick. So I was very worried that we would just, you know, be stranded or something, but they didn't care, and they had every Jim and Jack jumping onto the truck and off the truck, and you know, so we had to, as a side business, we had to cater for all the little smuggle activities that came over the border, and stop in this village and that village, loading on some chickens and loading them.
You
totally
became
weird.
a transportation for them as well.
As well, yeah, no, but because we were driving in a convoy, so our truck was full, but their police truck,
Oh.
and I was sitting in the police truck, and they drove our truck, so we couldn't like get away in our own truck, you know. So while asking us if we are working for some nefarious secret services and what have you. And then they brought us back about 150 kilometers. But then apparently the level of decision making wasn't high enough. So they actually brought us all the way back to Marondera eventually, which is near Harare, and it's the provincial capital of Mashonaland East. Totally run down police station, not a functioning toilet. Absolute horror. But anyways, in the beginning, they also kind of liked us. You know, we still had some cold beers in the truck, if you believe or not. You know, we had a camping fridge. You know, we shared some beers with the guys, with the police guys there. You know, but then eventually they saw somebody in who had no humor and who was never smiling, and that was kind of a high-level guy from the CIO, the Central Intelligence Organization, Mr. No Smiles, I call him in hindsight. And then they put us in a very nasty dungeon cell, you know, with like a hole in the middle where you can pee in, and iron rings where they didn't fasten us, but they had these iron rings to lock you down. And
As if you're some very dangerous criminal. I mean, really.
very, very, very nasty. And obviously, Mr. No Smiles, that was very interesting because it showed that they know what we are doing. Okay? But they can't really say it because then they would admit what they are doing. You know what I mean? So he was actually saying that they pick up when they fly over with their military planes, they pick up that what we are doing is disturbing some kind of electromagnetic field. He said that, you know, I mean, you only get that in Africa. It wouldn't have happened in America with that kind of openness. So that was a very dangerous situation, I think, because Mr. No Smiles actually wanted to force me to go with him and pick up everything we put, basically to reverse the whole trip, everything we've done in Zimbabwe. And my gut feeling was that I would not have come back alive from that trip. Because that was this kind of situation where you say, you know, try to flee, shot while trying to escape, and kind of thing. Yeah, anyway, so we were actually brought into another prison for holding, what you call it, awaiting trial, in shackles, you know, feet and hands, and then tossed into a cell where the other inmates were all naked. So you had to undress for the night. You had to undress completely naked, because they had this idea that then when you flee naked, everybody will spot you as a runaway prisoner and they'll catch you quickly. So, but luckily, my other inmates, everybody had found a way to hide some clothes in the window reveals or something, so it kind of became civilized again. But it was weird, and my Austrian friend went completely bonkers. I mean, he was not really, let's say, acclimatized to the African temperament and way of interacting. You know that he went on a hunger strike, and he was in a different cell, so I couldn't even communicate with him. But he went really a bit off the roll, and then the prison guys were kind of asking me to talk to him because they didn't want him to die on them.
Jeez.
You know, so that was quite an intense experience. But all in all, it was only 9 days, and then we had a date with for some reason out of nowhere, a young lawyer showed up, and and he was on my side, apparently, yeah. And the lawyer knew the magistrate, and a very small bribe changed hands, something like 250 US dollars, which was a lot of money in Zimbabwe in those days. And we were let off with a conviction. So I'm a convicted felon for littering in,
For
in Zimbabwe.
littering.
Littering, yes. Yeah.
That's all they
And
could pin on you.
it was an old paragraph from their penal code, which they probably inherited from the Brits. It was paragraph 10E of the Miscellaneous Misdemeanors Act, for placing an object in a place not designed to receive such objects. And that was the language of the paragraph that we were convicted on. And then we had to buy a fine of something ridiculous like 10,000 ZIM dollars. Nobody had ZIM dollars in those days anymore because everybody was already on US dollars. So you had to go to the bank for 2 hours to wait until they could count out these 10,000 ZIM dollars to pay the fine, and then we were good to go. But Mr. No Smiles had found my map, and that was the map where I had marked all the secret underground bases.
Wow.
And his eyes popped out. So, in fact, another confirmation, because he basically confirmed that this information is hot.
Mm-hmm.
And he wanted to keep me again. So in the end, I had that marked by hand I had this Southern Africa Adventure Atlas or something like that, you know. I was still traveling with paper maps in those days. And I finally I ripped out the page that had Zimbabwe on it and gave it to him. And he had to let us go. I think he didn't like to let us go. So
sure.
Yeah, so much about, do they know what they're doing? Yes, somehow they do. Or at some level, you know, at some level they.
I mean, let's just say they wouldn't have called in the CIO, you mentioned it, which I guess is like the CIA.
CIO is Central Intelligence Organization. It's their inland secret service.
But why would they have called in that level of intelligence for a simple misdemeanor, you know? So they knew.
Well, see, no, I wasn't there for the misdemeanor. The misdemeanor was like a foul compromise in the end, you know, to end the story.
Yeah. But they knew something.
They knew that we were doing something, and of course I think the way they think is that they think I must be from some other
secret private military.
Yeah, they don't understand simple people like us who just, you know, care to change the world and do that all on their own without an organization backing them up or anything. That's very strange to these people. So they do think you must be from some, you know, that some of them are also still in that anti-imperialist mindset. So they think you must be coming from one of the old colonial powers, you know, and I found that also in Mozambique. They still have this idea, you know, that you remember those South African mercenaries that were fighting in Mozambique against, you know, the Renamo and against what the other guys, Frelimo. No, it was just before my time, but anyways, there was the leftist liberation movement, and then there were the Renamo guys that were supported by South Africa. And so when they see somebody doing stuff like that, they often see it in that old framework still. You know, the old communist cadres that are now high level officials.
Yeah. So were you able to complete your expedition, or do you have to turn back and go home?
No, we were not. No, we were not. I would have, because they gave all our stuff back, and we had to exit to Malawi because we had already had our passports stamped. So when we were apprehended, we were already half through the border procedure. So we already had the exit. So we could only leave via Nyamapanda, which is on the way to what's it called now? Blantyre in Malawi. And we had a contact there. That was very nice because Dr. Chipangula, he was the president of all the traditional healers of Malawi. He is late, he's not around anymore, but we basically stayed with him for a few days. And I basically gave all the orgonite to him because my Austrian companion had completely lost his nerve. His girlfriend was texting every 2.5 seconds. You got another blip, blip, blip. Where are you? Are you coming home? You know, what? So, so we gave all our orgonite to basically the Malawian traditional healers network.
Well, that's a good
And
compromise.
I'm an honorary member of that association in the let's call it division rainmaking. Okay, I don't throw the bones and I don't do any of that stuff, but I'm now an acknowledged rainmaker of the traditional healers network. And he did distribute it nationwide, basically, in Malawi, because there's about 100,000 traditional leaders in that network.
Wow.
And Malawi was at the time threatened by a drought. And right after that, the next season, it had fantastic rainfalls. And in fact, what I learned later was that they had actually the first time in ages planted a winter and a summer crop in Malawi. Okay. So quite successful. We did come back to Malawi later, and we stayed in contact with Dr. Chipangula for a while until he unfortunately passed away. So originally we also used his muti in our orgonite until we were using muti from a local healer here in South Africa.
And for those that don't know, because maybe they're in the US, but that's like a special herbal blend, but I'll let you explain it.
Yeah, muti is a word used widely in all of Southern Africa for traditional medicine. Muti can be anything. It can be a magical amulet that you wear around your neck, or it can be actual herbal muti that you drink in a concoction, or so it's the widest, in the widest sense, it means medicine. Okay, and we because often when I travel in these rural African areas and I want to, for example, leave a cloudbuster in a village, for example, then I have to explain what it is, and the traditional people often think that when the white man brings something, it must be technical. There must be some buttons to push, and then whatever, some light show starts or whatever. So I always explain it to them and say, this is Muzungu Muti or Mulungu Muti, which means white man's medicine, so to say, because it works on the same etheric level as the traditional medicine works, so I've always liked on these trips to connect with traditional healers as much as I could. And wherever these traditions are still strong. So on our very first expedition outside South Africa, we went to a place called Injalele in Zimbabwe, which is south of the Matopos Hills. And that is a traditional rainmaking place. So it's like this very steep needle that comes out of the ground. It's a very particular rock formation that is obviously an energy spot. And every year there are big ceremonies that are held to call in the rain. And even the white farmers used to attend these ceremonies, when it was still a bit more harmonious, let's say, in Zimbabwe. And so we were lucky that we had a gardener who came from that area and who was fascinated with our cloudbuster. So we said, okay, we'll bring one to your home place, but only if you do a proper inauguration with a proper sangoma. And then it turned out that the lady who was overseeing the ceremony was actually the custodian of that Indalele place. And her uncle or father was somebody, his name was Alexander, and he was somebody that knew Credo Mutwa when Credo Mutwa was still a young boy. Very interesting. So,
Wow.
I was later actually back in that place, and this lady allowed me to place a cloudbuster on the grave of that Alexander, which I found quite an extraordinary, how can I say, expression of trust, I would say.
Wow.
So yeah, we've tried to do that a lot wherever possible. And
I think that's amazing. And, people need to continue because, getting some of those dirty Harry cloud busters, as you call them, from your website, they're really inexpensive. And if everyone just buys maybe like
that's a
3
tower
or
buster.
however.
Let's not confuse cloudbuster and a tower buster. So the
Sorry,
cloudbuster
okay.
is the big one,
My bad.
with the six pipes.
Yeah.
That remains stationary and is basically drawing the energy in from the sky and converting it. And what we call the Dirty Harry, that is the tower buster. It's the small little thingy.
Yeah.
That used to neutralize cell phone towers and things like that. So
Yeah. And it's so inexpensive. So if anyone just buy 1 or 3 or however many you can and just put it in your area around towers or prisons or places where there's bad energy, imagine the difference that it would make.
you can even bake them very easily yourself.
You've got a kit on your website, right?
As I like to sell them, we should not make it look more difficult than it is. Basically, you need a muffin pan, you need some aluminum filings, and you need some quartz breakage. It doesn't have to be special beautiful crystals. And you need polyester resin. It's all relatively cheap ingredients. And you can quickly make a few trays of, times 12. Each muffin pan has 12, what do you call it, molds, basically. If you just do one afternoon, you can quickly make 50 or 100 of these and start doing your area. So we actually recommend that. Obviously, we like to sell our stuff, but we find that those people who are catching on to the idea of gifting, which means to go beyond protecting yourself. So the first thing you do with Orgonite is protect yourself. Put a necklace, pendant around your neck, put something on your cell phone. Yes, you've got a beauty one there. Yes,
Love this one.
That's the Muti. That's actually the Muti pendant, the large Muti pendant.
So you can see it's got the coil at the back.
People love it because it has that African feel, So the people in North America and Europe, they love these because they connect them to Africa in some way.
Yeah, I really love this one.
And so it's actually normal and absolutely okay that this discovery of organ for your life starts with yourself, taking care of yourself. And then you can start moving out in concentric circles, then you realize that the cell phone towers in your area should get something, maybe the ones up to 3 kilometers from you, they're still strongly influencing you. And some people pop out of that, which is a kind of more self-concerned way and say, okay, let's actually go and do something on a bigger scale.
Yeah.
You know, and very often then these people also start making their own orgonite, and that's absolutely how it should be. You know, because orgonite is a movement of self-help, you know, etheric self-help. The main message is basically that we are not powerless, that whatever the deep state throws at us, which are often sophisticated technologies that cost them billions to implement, we can disable that for like $5.50, you know, or less, you know, depending if we make it ourselves, it can even be cheaper. And that's a very liberating feeling. You know, it's probably the reason why I got into it, because it was actually so much fun. You know, it's not, I don't see it as a
Empowering.
sacrifice to do that, but I've been enjoying this from the first moment, and sort of almost unintendedly, the business has grown out of that, which allows me to do these trips and travel all over Africa and the world, and be basically on a permanent road trip and do something useful in the process and write about it, which again helps my business. So it's actually a fantastic combination.
Well, you're living your passion, so, you know.
That has empowered us, you know, for the last 22 years.
Yeah. And just to remind people, if they didn't watch the previous episode, George is basically used to be an architect. So
I still am, actually.
are you still an architect? Okay.
I've just renewed my professional license, actually.
Hmm.
So, but I'm mostly designing for myself. You know, I've designed the office that we are sitting in here, and I've designed our workshops, and I'm presently building a house in the Western Cape. Also from my design, but also in a very DIY fashion, because I don't have the 5 million lying around that the house would cost if had it built by a contractor. So
Why not?
So yeah, it's fun.
Yeah, wonderful. I wanted to ask you this question. Is it possible to have too much orgonite around you? I've heard some people say that it can create a lot of energy. So you might not sleep that well. The energy might be too intense.
You know what? It's been brought up again and again by people in forums and what have you. My feeling is the people who say that, because I cannot confirm that. I mean, we are surrounded by, because we manufacture it. So
Yeah.
we've got like hundreds of pieces around us, and we sleep well, and we are very happy. The garden is thriving, you know, and so on. So my feeling is that the people who say that, they have some kind of dark side aspect to them that they don't want to sacrifice.
So the orgonite is unleashing the
yeah, it's very, it makes life very uncomfortable for dirty
the dark
psychics.
ones.
Let's call it dirty psychics. So in the beginning, I did a lot of these, you know, spiritual healing fairs and things like that. So I would rent a table, you know, and put my stuff and sit there for 2 days, and sometimes barely make my table rent back, you know, but it was interesting. And there were always, you know, because on these fairs you have a lot of like palm readers and tarot people and what have you. And there were always one or two. One particular incident I remember where this one lady said she can't handle this anymore. She must go outside. It's this horrible orgonite, you know. And, rah, rah, rah. So yes, we think that it is generally unblocking. You know, it's what orgonite does. It's unblocking blocked energies, and what is a negative person? You know, you're not born as a negative person. You become a negative person because of some trauma, you know, that you have in you, and
Yeah.
that makes you act basically out of fear. You know, I think most negative people act out of fear of losing control or whatever it is. You know, so opening up that pent up box of Pandora, you know, whatever they have in them, is a painful process.
Mm.
You know, so I had it also a lot with Black people who are often more sensitive to the energy of the orgonite. One friend, he's actually a traditional king. And when he came to my house the first time, his nose started running, you know, the eyes started itching, and he was getting almost like an asthmatic shock. Okay.
Wow.
So this happens. You know, it's got that power to yeah, to bring out the hidden, you know, or
It
that's
optimizes the energy, I guess. And
part
that
of the
can,
healing process. I mean, that's the reason why we put it in places like prisons, Masonic lodges, or whatever, to either make the nasty guys uncomfortable or to help those that are, you know, kind of oppressed or whatever, caught up in a very negative situation. We have also gifted cemeteries quite a lot. So if I drive past a cemetery, I would definitely try and lose one there. And often we found also that there was a feeling of relief, you know, as if you had a trapped soul that was relieved or released.
managed to be.
I'm not perceiving on that level, you know, but it's I've traveled with a lot of very psychic people who have confirmed that kind of action, I would call it. Okay. I'm a little bit less sensitive, and I think it's good because I'm going into some highly contested spaces in terms of the etheric fight between the nasties and the not so nasties. It's quite good, I think, that I'm not super sensitive psychic. You know,
Yeah.
it's okay to put of a leather jacket on, you know, rather
Yes.
than a silk pajama. You know, because we've gone to many places that are dark territory, I would say.
Yeah. So just a very sort of left side question. What about now? You know, on everyone's minds at the moment are the hurricanes. Is there anything that people can do about hurricanes and typhoons?
Yes. It's very sad that at the moment there is not really. There used to be a much more organized group of organ gifters, you know, and linked mostly through the Etheric Warrior Forum of Don Kroc, who passed away unfortunately a few years ago. You can deflate a storm with organ power, but you need a lot, you know. You can't just get out on your stoop with a tower buster in your hand and say, storm be gone. Although it's a good gesture, but you probably, you know, for a thing like that, I think it's called Winston, the one that's now approaching Florida, you need to probably have about 20 big cloudbusters, and you need to neutralize all the cell phone towers in the area. And what you can do is if you have a cloudbuster, meaning the thingy with the
copper
tube,
pipes. Yeah.
copper pipes, yeah. That thing has a directed energy. So it basically creates a low pressure system. So if you have it pointing upwards, you tend to have a low pressure system which allows rainfall to happen. You know, because what HARP does and so on, it kind of electrifies, it ionizes the air and increases the pressure, so it doesn't rain. You know, and the cloudbuster in direction of its pipes creates a low pressure system. So we've done it quite often, even on our trips, when we had just nasty, unpleasant winds coming at us. You point the cloudbuster against it, and you find that it calms it down. It's like a deflating action. So in the case of such a hurricane, which seems to be also artificially stimulated, to say the least,
yeah,
you would point several cloudbusters at that storm, and thereby take the pressure out of it. You know, so
yeah,
there's no guarantee, but it has been done by Orgon activists before, even also in Florida. There were reports coming from Orgon people that they put a few cloudbusters. That was not a major Category 5 storm, but also quite nasty storm. So the Orgonite does help with these things. But it's not a machine, right? It's not like you can say, okay, I put 3 cloudbusters, that will do it. You know, you have to experiment, and if it doesn't work, you mustn't give up, but you must put more. You know, it's
yeah. It's
what
not
we
a
experience.
perfect science necessarily.
No, we don't really know everything about the universe. You know, we have to say that, we have to be honest, that we don't really know all the processes that are really happening. But what we know is that the process is always a harmonizing one, or a converting of pent-up negative energy to positive energy. What this actually means and what the effects of that is not always predictable. We don't also know really all the factors that are at play. We don't know what kind of atmospheric heaters are on and beaming this way, that way, and so on and so on. So it's very hard.
Dealing with.
It's very hard to say. So our game has been to just continue gifting until we reach the tipping point. You know, and that means it takes a little bit of conviction to do that, because you will not necessarily always get the result by putting up your one cloudbuster in your yard, and then you think the world, you are making a difference, but it may not yet tip the scales on the big picture side. You know, so what I found with our gifting work is that it's a persistent effort over many years. And we've done I think we've placed about 30,000 tower busters in the 10 Southern African countries, and about 120 or 130, I've stopped counting a little bit, cloudbusters, of whom hopefully about 60% are still standing. You know, because in rural Africa, the temptation is also
steal the pipes.
Also big to sell those copper pipes for scrap, you know, unfortunately. But yeah, so this is a big effort, but I believe that we have achieved quite a bit. We have not had all these big droughts that were announced, you know, or let's call it prognosticated. We have learned to replace the word prognosticated with the word plan. So when they say, for example, I don't know, it was 2003, 2004, I think, they said there was going to be a monster drought in Zambia with probably 10 million people dying from hunger. Okay? So that was in the Star newspaper, it was everywhere. It didn't happen. Why did it not happen? We did something about it. See, so there was a lot of these things. The famous hour zero in Cape Town, you know, when they because they love this idea of water scarcity. You may have noticed that.
Yeah, it's a way to control people, and we know that
they've been predicting wars over water as the thing for the 21st century. You know, when they say predicting, it means they're planning to make that happen.
Exactly.
Yeah, because they're stupid. They're not really capable of prognosticating anything, except if it's their plan and it's them putting it into action because they know fuck all about the weather on next Monday, and even less idea of the climate or anything. This is all complete bullshit. And so when they prognosticate something, it means that is what they're planning to do. Okay,
Indeed.
it's very easy. So it's a very easy instruction of how to read mainstream media narratives, basically, or that they love to play out. So yeah, I think we've achieved quite a lot. We have still a few chemtrails here and there, you know, and some people, I say that, oh, you are discovering this now. Okay, but some people are making panic over those chemtrails. I think it's nonsense. There's nothing major is actually happening anymore in South Africa in terms of weather manipulation. Nothing that you need to really worry about. You know, there's a bit of chemtrails and a bit of electronically modulated skies here and there, but it's minute. You know, if you look at the typical European sky these days, or North American sky, it's like crisscrossed by multiple layers of chemtrails basically the whole day. Yeah. And all over the continent. That is the real thing, but we don't get this here. I live next to Jan Smuts Airport, you know, and we have beautiful blue skies, cumulus clouds, no chemtrails. I think Hoedspruit Air Force Base was the chemtrail base for Southern Africa.
That's where they're doing. But also there's been a lot of NASA planes spotted in South Africa. Well, they started flying here a couple of months ago, and somebody actually mapped out the flight pattern. They were just flying along the coast, up and down, up and down. So some people were thinking
probably they're just playing, you know, but I don't think they're having the desired effects from their perspective.
No, the efforts are not enough, unfortunately for them. Fortunately for us.
Fortunately for us, you know, and I believe that we are actually in a very good spot here in South Africa. And I feel that I would call it the groundless optimism among many people. Because on an outward level, South Africa seems to be going to shit, you know, people often. And yet we are living quite well here. And we are free from a lot of the destructive and negative influences that are prevailing on European and North American soil. You know? So I think we're very lucky here. And I just hope that we get the geopolitical thing right and get out of the debt-based currency system, and then South Africa can just fly.
Yeah.
So I'm optimistic about the whole BRICS story. Even though South African big business is not really on board, but it doesn't matter.
We know
they
why.
Don't have a say. Yeah, well, sure, but you know, there's a certain gravity pulling in that direction, and they'll eventually have to adapt or die. You know,
and we all know most of them will die. Well, I hope so anyway. The big nefarious corporations.
Yeah, they're not really adding that much value. So
Indeed. So we can look forward to a beautiful future. There's still a few niggles and, you know, things, interferences, but for the most part, we know that the battle is already won.
Niggles like World War III happening, you know.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of happy not to be in Germany. I had another German friend that came back from Germany not too long ago. She's moved to South Africa now, but she just says that place is very heavy. People are
That's
depressed.
amazing, right? Amazing how many Germans are moving to. It's funny. They're picking up that vibe. They're picking up that there's more energy here. You know, I live there nowadays still, or actually they moved back there. They grew up here and they moved back there. They're happy there. But when I go there, even before this whole war scenario and so on, I always had the feeling that Germany is under Prozac. You know, it's like they're all
everything is suppressed.
Yeah, as if they're drugged. It's like when you walk in a forest where fresh snow has fallen, which is completely sound absorbing. That kind of feeling, you know, you don't hear a loud noise, or everything is subdued. Everything is so yeah. I don't feel comfortable there. You know, I have, how can I say, emotional connection to Germany because I am of that tribe, but I don't feel that I could be there for longer than 2 weeks. You know, it's just okay. For 2 weeks is fine. But
A lot
I
of people
couldn't live
say
there
that.
at the moment. Yeah, it's sad. It's very sad, you know, because I don't think it will be like that forever, but something has to pop, you know, and that has not happened yet.
I think things will definitely change, but obviously, you know, that was kind of pretty much the center of Europe where a lot of the control happens. And as you say, it does feel like nobody is allowed to kind of speak out. Everyone is kind of very suppressed, and you can see that in the personalities or in the character of a lot of people, because you can see the suppressed anger and frustration. Like, to get a smile out of people there walking the street is a tad difficult. But yeah, we are very lucky here, but I think that'll change as well. But Europe might go through some heavy stuff before it all kind of shifts.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. It's hard to predict. But for Germany, I would say that a beneficial and friendly Russian occupation wouldn't be the worst thing to happen.
Yeah, the Russians would certainly
The
make it a
Russians
much nicer place to live, I would imagine.
I don't think the Russians are actually interested in occupying
No,
countries.
they're not.
But on the other hand, you know, I'm very infatuated with Russia and learning the language.
I see you've got Putin on your mug, so yeah, I can see that.
Yeah, I've got also t-shirts and stuff, you know, so but I mean, that's just to get people talking, you know, that's a good thing because people are not used to that. But I believe that Russia is on a trip. Obviously, nothing is perfect, you know, but Russia is on a trip to find itself, you know, in terms of its spirituality and its deeper roots. And it is essentially fighting for its right to be so and to not be part of the global mishmash that is
New World Order, shall we say.
Yeah, and so when we were there, we traveled there twice, in 2015 and in 2016. 2015 was only a one-day land visit on a cruise of the Baltic Sea. So we came to St. Petersburg and we were basically loaded into a bus and shown all the highlights, you know, the Hermitage and St. Catherine's Summer Palace and so on and so on. And I was completely surprised because I had expected something very different. I was surprised by the splendor and the freshness and the aliveness of this country. And I mean, being in a bus like a stupid tourist, you know, and you get hoarded into a place where they feed 80 people, and you get the tastiest meal that you've tasted in a long time, because it's potatoes that taste like real potatoes and a freshly grated apple and carrot salad, nicely made a bit sour with lemon, and a wonderfully nicely fried chicken. I was like, wow, you know, and then we went, a year later, we organized to send Orgonite to a friend in Moscow. And we did a gifting tour of Moscow and St. Petersburg. And I was very apprehensive. I mean, you know, I've grown up in West Berlin, surrounded by 2 million Soviet soldiers, and a very oppressive East German regime that was feeling like George Orwell, basically in 3D, right? That was at least my perception of East Germany. And so I expected that kind of old communist East Bloc feel in Moscow a lot. And I was very astonished to practically not find it. To find only freshness and how can I say?
Lightness.
It was a
light
very, very, very interesting experience. And we went on a river ship. You know, we went. So our Moscow friend, showed us around for 5 days. Wonderful. Showed us very beautiful places, and we did a small river cruise on a local kind of little ship, and I dropped a lot of stuff into the Moscow, because I find when I visit a big city like that, you know, and I don't have a local base there and so on, I will not try to run around and start gifting cell phone towers and stuff like that, you know, especially when I
might
don't
just be
know
locked up again.
how the Secret Service there would view such an activity, you know. So I try to keep it low key, you know, and the lowest key is that you sit in, on a little white ship, you know, next to the railing with maybe a beer or a lemonade or a tea in front of you, and just drop something into the water here and there. And
So as easy as that.
from a bag, you know, you have a little backpack, and so easy. The good thing is water is a super energy carrier, and it basically allows you to lay a string, an energetic string. You know, and that was also our plan, to do that from Moscow to St. Petersburg, and obviously see some of the country in the process. And we did the cheapest river cruise you could get, which was the Russian one. So we didn't have any English translation. You know, there's like twice the price. You can go with this Scandinavian company where you have English speaking, you know, entertainment and stuff. And we enjoyed it. Google Translate always, you know,
Works like a charm.
a few words that we understood, and a few people could speak some German or some English, not many. Although what I found is that the older Russians have all read the German classics in Russian translation. Very interesting. And you know, while in Germany they are now making movies like "Fuck You, Goethe," you know, Goethe being one of our famous classic writers. So, that was for me, but also very interesting to find that the Russians have never, even in communist times, they've never stopped appreciating their own literary classics. They've never stopped reading Pushkin or Tolstoy or whatever, even though these people were absolutely not communists. You know, they're espousing maybe Christian values or very bourgeois type of scenarios. You know, and if you read Pushkin, it's all about some officers dueling each other over a woman, that, you know, what have you. You know, so it's completely not the communist ideal. And yet they've never stopped reading that stuff. You know, actually, I've learned a lot by interacting with people, that they're very different from what I thought they were. You know, when you think of the kind of James Bond version of fierce communists.
Russian spy.
Russian spies. Anyway, so it was that trip was amazing. 11 days on the rivers and canals, and stepping out in many places. Obviously, outside Moscow, outside Petersburg, it's not yet so posh. You know, you have to see, Moscow is rich. Moscow is amazing. You know, it's like, it's got probably 20 shopping malls that are better and richer than Sandton, you know, or whatever the equivalent is in Cape Town. It's fucking rich, you know, and it's opulent, and that's what I wasn't prepared, because everybody says, yeah, you know, but it's just a few oligarchs, you know, and then the rest is dirt poor. So okay, we asked our friend, let's go to the periphery, the so-called sleep towns, you know, so that we finally find those poor people. Where are these poor people? So yeah, listen, maybe not everybody is driving an Audi Q8 with tinted windows, you know, like the oligarchs, but the metro and the buses and everything is so good that you don't need it. And in those far out places, then we went to the basement of some of these high-rise apartment buildings, and there was the most amazing kind of fresh produce, organic, vegetable bio shop, you know, with including herbal toothpaste from Siberian.
They've got a rich herbal medicine history as well.
Absolutely, absolutely. So we did look for the, let's call it the leftovers that were left out by the Putin revolution, and we didn't find them. Sorry to say. And even on the countryside, you know, where the buildings have not yet been all renovated, and you see lots of older cars. So in Moscow, you see, and that is now, I'm talking 8 years ago, you see Mercedes, Audi, you know, you don't see Fiat Uno because they don't survive. They don't survive in winter. So they love big car, okay, or they take the tram or the subway, which is perfectly organized, super clean. There's no dirt on the tracks when you do the subway in Berlin now. It's rubbish. It's like, you know, it looks like Kailicha everywhere, basically. Sure. And shopping. Yeah. In Russia, there is always an old grandmother on the plafond who makes sure that nobody does any shit. Okay, so.
Yeah, I was in Moscow 25 years ago and I loved it. Unfortunately, didn't get much time to travel around because I was there for business. I was at a conference, but
like
I loved it.
Late 90s, eh?
Yeah.
That was,
or maybe
still,
early, that was early 2000s. Yeah.
Yeah.
Maybe
well,
20 years ago.
I didn't have that privilege. I traveled in Poland and so in the 90s quite a bit. And Czech Republic, but not in Russia. So my first time in Russia was 2015. But that was the time when you couldn't open the shop without paying the mafia, basically. You know, that was the dark time of Russia, actually, the 90s. Yeah,
I was there early 2000s. It was, yeah, I loved it. I was actually traveling with a colleague that was Ukrainian, so she could do all the translation, and it was very interesting. But,
you know, in those days, Ukrainians and Russians did not see themselves as separate people.
Yeah.
Themselves as maybe different dialects, which is actually still the truth.
Yeah.
You know, the first time I met a Ukrainian girl here in South Africa, she introduced herself as Russian because she didn't expect me to understand the difference. And she was from Vinica, which is part of Western Ukraine, which is where all the anti-Russian sentiment is the strongest. So she was actually married with a South African guy, had come here with him, you know, and when I first met her, Maria, she said, yeah, I'm Russian. Then she said, no, but actually I'm Ukrainian. I said, yeah, okay, why don't you say so? But
too many questions, I guess.
I've met so many Russians who were born in Kiev, you know, and I believe that 25, 30 years ago, let's say after the fall of the Soviet Union, but before all these color revolutions, you would have more likely on the streets of Kiev, you would have more likely found that somebody would approach you and speak Russian rather than Ukrainian. Yeah. Just like in Pretoria, they speak Afrikaans to you automatically, and in Joburg, they speak English. You know, it's a,
yeah.
So,
very interesting.
Yeah. It's quite weird. It's quite weird. This whole Ukrainian identity. You know, it's.
Yeah, it was all, you know, artificially created. It was all, you know, part of Russia. The whole, you know. So, anyway, that's a
actually,
whole.
Well, I mean, we are digressing from the whole Orgonite theme. I hope you don't mind. But
We're on the Russian. Yeah, let's not
It's all
get
to do with
distracted.
positive energy in the end. In the end, it has to do with positive energy.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking the organ is strong in Russia. They almost don't need the orgonite. Okay? I wouldn't go that far. I'm still planning to put more. But
You didn't find the energy as dense.
I didn't find, no. That was my biggest surprise, I must say. Also that we were completely not molested or supervised, at least not in any visible or obstructive way. You know, we didn't feel any of the paranoia that used to be characteristic of the East Bloc in the old Soviet days. And I mean, I've experienced the East Bloc as a West Berliner quite extensively. You know, transit routes and visiting East Berlin, relatives that I had there, and even did trips to Prague and other places. And it was always this, like, you didn't want to talk loud, you didn't want to, you know, attract attention, you wanted to stay under the radar, you know, and everybody was like that. So the whole place was always like gray, you know, and suppressed.
Yeah. Hopefully all
Me in
that will
the,
change very soon.
yeah, I hope so. I hope so. Yeah.
But George, we have to almost start wrapping up. It's been a while. But I wanted to quickly
Yeah.
ask you about your zappers, because they're
Okay.
interesting as well. The zapper. I'm going to share screen just to
Yeah.
your website,
Mm-hmm.
and then you can talk about what do these zappers do? How did you?
Okay, a zapper is okay. Let's see what comes up there.
Sorry, let me actually. No, sorry. Let me
Start
just. Sorry, let me just. I'm sharing.
There we go.
Let me just. Oh, everything is freezing here. I'm not sure what you're seeing now.
I've seen many pages open at the same time, and some of it also zapper related.
I've
So
got
the
too many
zapper is,
pages open. It's a nightmare.
let me talk a little bit about it. So the zapper is a little electronic device that sends an electric pulse into the skin. There we go. It's a little box that we wear on our skin, and that is basically energizing our body with electrons, with negative ions. And our organ zappers also have the orgonite in them and some other components that are working on an energetic or biofield level. And essentially what it does is it kills parasites, bacteria, even cancer cells, and so it helps the body to get rid of toxins. And we see that as a, let's call it first line of defense against disease. So in the same spirit that we say our orgonite movement is there to empower people to take life into their own hands, the zapper also helps you to take your health into your own hands. The original idea of the zapper comes from Dr. Hulda Clark, who wrote the book The Cure for All Diseases. And Don Croft adopted the zapper from Hulda Clark and added all the orgonite components to it, which I think made it into a much more versatile healing tool. Yeah, so I consider zapping as essential as maybe brushing your teeth, or like a basic hygiene that one can do. Simple
That's
to
amazing.
wear. You just wear it on your skin. It's got this little strap.
But does it matter which side is touching your skin? No.
No, the electrodes should touch the skin. There is actually the requirement that you get some electric current going through your skin.
Okay, because I bought my first one. It's a small one that you can travel with. I think it's and I was wanting to put it on my back, but obviously
they're all the same size.
all the
same size.
But I turned it where you see the two magnets. Is that correct?
That's the electrodes. That's actually the skin contact electrodes.
Okay. And you can move it around with
So
your
you
body,
want,
or it doesn't really matter where you put it?
you can, I mean, if you have any particular problem like an infected liver or something, you would want to put it on that spot, but in general, you can put it anywhere on your body. My favorite spot is actually under the foot, where I keep it all night. And that is for the reason what you want to achieve. So one thing is that it energizes the whole body. It's basically pumping electrons into the body. And the best thing to do is to try and energize your blood, or to zap blood. So it's nice to have it anywhere close where the blood vessels are close to the surface of the skin. So you could wear it on your pulse, but the pulse, that skin is quite soft. So after a while, it will start burning. And that's why I like to put it basically in the arch under my foot, where it's an ideal combination of several factors. One is the blood vessels are close to the skin, but the skin is much harder than on the pulse, so you won't get burned. Plus, you have all your foot reflex zones basically coming
Your
together there.
reflexology
So
points.
your traditional Chinese medicine meridians, your reflex zones, you're stimulating all of that. Okay, so it's very good.
All of your organs, basically.
Yeah, basically you're reaching all your organs and you're reaching your blood, you know, and it doesn't hurt, because I'm, especially when I feel I have, I don't know, I feel tense or I have a cold or flu sneaking up on me, that's when I would definitely put it on the whole night and just keep it on my foot. And yeah, but you can wear it on your arm, you know, some people like to wear it like dudes who used to wear cigarette packs, you know, under their t-shirt. You can do it like that, you know, it doesn't really matter. But if you have a concrete problem, you could actually attach it directly to the affected body part for a while, you know, without the strap. Then you can just hold it there or put it under your shirt or whatever. So it's a universal tool. It often helps tremendously. I'm not saying that it replaces all other things, you know, like Hulda Clark was saying, the cure for all diseases. I think you still need to eat good food and you know, get the toxins out of your body and so on and so on.
Yeah, but, that's fantastic, and especially the idea that it could get rid of parasites, because that's such a big theme at the moment. You know, they also put parasites.
Parasites are a big problem, you know, and Hulda Clark, who was actually a microbiologist by academic background, she said that the average American has about 1 pound of living parasites. And interesting thing that I want to mention before we wind up is electro-hypersensitivity. That now links back to our problem with the cell phone towers and so on. So there's quite a few people who are so hypersensitive to electromagnetic radiation that they feel...
Including myself.
You are one of them, okay. But I don't see you with a silver woven fabric yet.
I don't think the audience would necessarily understand that, so...
You took it off for our meeting, and normally you're
I normally wear my silver robe and my silver hat and all of that.
Is it?
Okay. No, I'm joking.
Okay. But there are people who feel that they need that, and I mean, we have to take their sensation seriously. So what we think is happening is, because they report, for example, that they feel it's like crawling under their skin.
Yes. Right? It's crawling.
What I'm saying,
I almost feel like it's boiling in my cells.
Okay, so what I'm saying is it is actually crawling under your skin, and that is the parasites that have embedded themselves there and that get stimulated by the electromagnetic energy, because these parasites in the larva stage, they have these chitin exoskeletons, which, you know what, like a bug, this crunchy, that crunchy stuff that, you know, there's soft inside and crunchy outside.
Mm.
And that crunchy shell actually acts like an electrical receiver. It's like a
Yes.
Faraday cage type of thing.
Wow.
So they pick up that electric energy and they become hyperactive. So they start moving faster under your skin. When you're not near a cell phone tower, they're like embedded and they're more or less snoozing and just feeding on your nutrients peacefully.
Yeah.
And when you're near a strong modem or a cell phone tower, they start crawling, and then you feel that something is crawling under your skin. And then the conventional medical people will say you are delusional, you're having, you know, whatever. You're a bit mad and you should probably take some kind of a tranquilizer and then it will be fine. And so we believe that zapping helps with that condition.
Mm. But you know, it's so difficult getting rid of parasites. You can't just pop an ivermectin. It's a whole range of, you know,
Yeah,
your zapper aside, that, you know,
ivermectin helps, but there's obviously also a traditional walnut tincture and what's it called?
wormwood and
Yeah, all these things, wormwood, St. John's, and so you can concoct a natural. But there's nothing wrong with ivermectin. I mean, ivermectin.
yeah, but it doesn't cover all the parasites. So you have to do, it only covers, I think, is it the bigger or the smaller ones? I can't remember. I think the bigger ones.
I
So
don't
the
really
smaller
know.
ones are not covered.
We take ivermectin as a precaution against so-called COVID, but I believe it's very powerful. But the thing is, the zapper reaches most of the parasites outside the intestines, and even to a degree inside the intestines, because we work with a relatively low frequency. We work with 15 hertz, you know, not 1 kilohertz, but 15 pulses per second. Interestingly, what most people don't know, the lower the frequency, the better the penetration. Okay, that's why submarines communicate with ultra low frequency, because they want to penetrate through 10,000 meters of ocean water plus the curvature of the earth plus whatever to their home base.
Wow.
So people often don't understand that the higher the frequency, for example, with the whole discussion of 5G. 5G is a much higher frequency than the older cell phone networks, but it is less penetrating in terms of your concrete walls and so on. So that's why they have to put 10 times as many antenna.
Yeah. It only has like 100-meter range or
which
something.
means in the end, your electronic soup becomes a lot more dense. But the actual 5G frequency doesn't penetrate as much as the older 3G or 4G frequency.
Yeah. Interesting.
Just a side story. But I mean, we've been tested with various machines like SCIO machines and so on, and we don't have any parasites. So I believe that it does go into the intestines as well, especially if you do it for 6 weeks in a row. You know, for example, if you really do that under the foot protocol for 6 weeks in a row, you should catch all stages of the parasite, because that's because they constantly develop from egg to larvae to whatever, and you want to capture that all. So you have to keep them under fire, essentially.
Wow, I've learned something new.
Until you get them all, you know. So 6 weeks is normally considered, then you would have gone through all the stages of all the parasites that you might potentially have. And obviously we're picking up new ones.
All the time.
All the time, yes.
Even the letters that, you know, they're everywhere. Like,
of course, but normally they're not such a big problem. If your gut, your stomach acid is strong. You know, you need that hydrochloric acid in your stomach, which a lot of people don't have enough of it. The other thing is that parasites migrate through the intestine, because in the intestines, normally, if they stay there, they are taken care of and they go out again. But the problem is that due to solvents and household chemicals of all sorts, our intestinal barrier is becoming porous. And that allows the parasites to invade other body cavities where they would normally not be found. And that's now where it becomes really dangerous. As long as they stay in the intestine, they're not really doing that much damage, you know. But the problem is the household chemicals. But that's where this gets them, because if they venture outside of their assigned territory, which is the intestine, we zap them.
Yeah, you can wear it anywhere in the body. Doesn't mean you mentioned the foot as an effective place to wear.
I like it. I like that under the foot thing. That's my personal style, you know. But it's not mandatory.
Sounds good.
As I said, you could wear it here. You know, you can wear it on your arm. You can put it wherever you're not feeling good or where you think you have a problem. You can attach it right there. You can put it around on your ankles, on your calves. You know, I mean, the strap obviously suggests to attach it to one of our limbs, but we can also take the strap off and just put it wherever we feel that it should be.
Very exciting. Well, I'm looking forward to experimenting with mine over the next month or so. And guys, just click on the link below. It will take you to the Orgonise Africa site, and it will give you a 10% discount as well. I'm just really enjoying my Orgonite from Orgonise Africa. I've got so many around the house and inside the house. So yeah, I think it's essential for days, you know, for the days that we are in at the moment. So thank you, George. Is there anything else you want to share with us that you think we should be aware of?
I think we've covered quite a lot of ground, and I hope that your listeners will not be overstretched by the wide loops that we've made. But in the end, it's all about the positive energy. So
absolutely, and it's, you know, it's effectively, you know, things from nature, putting that all together and creating a harmonious energy field around wherever you place your home, yourself, cell towers. So yeah, I love it. And I love my pendant.
Absolutely.
I even sleep with it. Even though it's big and heavy, I sleep with it.
That's very commendable. I sleep with this one as well, and I shower with it and I bath with it.
Okay, so it doesn't get, because I thought maybe it would get like a bit worn or matte on the outside. If you shower with it or swim in the sea,
you could still
bit of
polish
erosion.
it. Still buy some car polish and polish it back.
Okay, good.
All right.
Thank you so much. That was a wealth of information, George, and a very nice conversation as usual. So hope you guys will check out the site, and they ship to the US and Europe and all over the place. So yeah, and maybe George will write us a nice blog post about the parasites, because I think that's something that everyone will be interested to read more on.
Absolutely. I will do that.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let me just stop sharing. That was great. And yeah, thank you so much. Thanks for all the hard work you do for the planet.
I hope that excursion into my Russophilia wasn't too much for your listeners.
No, I mean, we love Russia. It's a friend of ours, and yeah. So it's a friend of all the patriots and the freedom seekers and the truth seekers.
We are a BRICS country after all. Eh? And you know, the Russians are now offering asylum to everybody in a Western country, and they've published a big list.
Yeah,
who feel oppressed the woke policies of their country.
Yeah.
So you can jump over all the other requirements normally you should have like a Russian language proficiency test, you know, and what have you, and go through. So if you feel that you are not comfortable with the policies of your country, you can immediately get a 3-month visa to explore Russia widely, which is nice, I think. So yeah,
we should take that opportunity to get to know the country.
Yeah, I want to see a lot more. I want to see a lot more. Maybe next year we'll have an opportunity. I must see. It's also a money question, of course, because I'm building and all the money goes into that side. But I'm going every month. When I'm in Joburg, I go to the Russian embassy's film evening. It's quite nice, actually. So I've befriended their press attaché, a very learned guy who knows a lot about Germany and what have you. And so we always have an interesting movie, and the ambassador says something, you know, and then it's cocktail, wine and cheese and little. It's actually done in a hotel school. So there's good catering. And what I really love is the mix of South Africans that attend. You know, it's a totally broad spectrum of all political persuasions. It goes from MK veterans who studied in Moscow in the 1950s to South Afrikaner Broederbond guys who find that the Freedom Front is too liberal. Okay, so you've got that whole
it's very wide spectrum.
A fantastic spectrum, you know, of the young, bright-eyed black bricks future leaders to the yeah, like I say, there's a strong Boer contingent that goes. You know,
didn't they also offer free farms or something like that?
There are quite a few Boers that have settled in South Africa, in Russia. I'm not 100% sure where.
Yeah, I heard something like that. They're offering them
actually almost like a colony, so they kind of wanted to have a few of their fellow Talgenote around them, you know. So I think there's like a whole place where there's also whole villages that are colonized by Germans that have enough of Germany.
Not surprisingly.
Not surprisingly. Yeah. So there is quite a, I would call it an undercurrent of immigration into Russia. Still, young Russians think that the West is the best, you know, that, I mean, that has been nourished for a long time.
Yeah.
But
we saw a lot of young Russians in the East and the Southeast Asia when we were there. They're all over the place.
But... Yeah, this guy that showed us around in Moscow, he's now in Shanghai. He's a young construction engineer, not young, he's in his 40s, but I consider that more young. But and he's married a Chinese girl and all that. And I met him in Holland at a free energy conference, you know. And that's how we connected. And then he was willing to receive all the orgonite at the address of his mother. So we sent it by post office, totally inconspicuous, over many months, you know, like one parcel at a time. And we then accumulated 400 tower busters there at the address of his mother.
Wow.
Yeah. But he was also one of those guys, you know, that in the 90s, of course, it was all, the West was the thing, you know, that was the time when they all ran to McDonald's, you know, and but now they find the what you call it, the cafeterias, you know, where you push your tablet and you get the nice Russian food is much more healthy and tasty in the long run. So McDonald's has seen his curiosity value, and now it's not so big anymore. But you know, he was like in a rock band and then playing Dire Straits covers, you know, and so completely like westward oriented, and it's typical for that generation. A lot of them, and when that war started, the so-called special military operation, a lot of more young Russians left Russia quickly and found that they were not welcome in the West. And that was a big disappointment for them because they thought, because they didn't expect that the sentiment would be generally anti-Russian. They thought it would only be anti-Putin or anti-whatever. No? So they now went all over the place to America and Amsterdam and Paris and what have you, and found that people,
with all the woke crowd, they did not get any support.
They did not really find the open welcome, the open-armed welcome that they were expecting. So a lot of them have kind of drifted back now.
Yeah, I'm sure we can still talk for hours, but I've got to wrap this up now. Thank you so much for your time and information.
Even me, I should do some work, but the good thing is I can do work whenever I like. So
wonderful.
Thanks for this. And let me know when it's published, because I want to link it on my website as well.
I will do. I'm going to say goodbye to the audience. Stay online. Thanks, everyone.
Are they still online?
Are they listening?
Are they still listening to our crap? I thought you switched it off already.
Thanks, everyone. Cheers.